The sick glee with which he announces taxes. It has nothing to do with helping people. It has everything to do with punishing people.
So Ben Shapiro just demolished socialist tax policy with surgical precision, and it's exactly what America needs to hear right now. We're watching NYC's real estate market implode while Democrats celebrate punishing wealth creators. This breakdown exposes their true motivations versus actual economic reality. Let's dive in.
The thing no Democrat has ever been able to answer is what exactly represents a fair tax rate? When is fair enough? If the normal person were to pay a 40% tax rate and the richy rich were to pay a 90% tax rate, would that be fair?
This cuts to the heart of progressive taxation's fundamental weakness. They never specify an endpoint because fairness isn't about economics, it's about power. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez proposed 70% rates, she couldn't explain why not 80% or 90%. The goalposts always move because the real goal is control.
If, in fact, everyone were to pay a 100% tax rate, would that be fair? No Democrat can ever explain what the ideal fair tax rate is because fair is a fungible term. It doesn't mean anything.
Exactly right. Fair has become the left's Swiss Army knife. It means whatever advances their agenda at any given moment. When pressed for specifics, they retreat to emotional appeals because their policies aren't designed to solve problems. They're designed to punish success and redistribute power to government bureaucrats.
Fair is in the eye of the beholder. The real key is that you are punishing and reveling in punishing the rich people. That's what it's about, which is why the Democratic Party on tax day put out a tweet saying, tax the rich. Remember, not help the poor, tax the rich.
That Democratic Party tweet reveals everything. Notice they didn't say fund infrastructure or reduce inequality, just tax the rich. It's pure resentment politics. Their base gets dopamine hits from wealthy people suffering, which explains why they celebrate business exodus from blue states as victories rather than disasters.
That's all they care about is taxing the rich. And the way you know that it's working is because you are making the rich poorer. This is why Zoran Mamdani, the communist mayor of New York, was sitting on a stage yesterday with a gigantic backdrop reading Tax the Rich, talking about how well all of this is working.
Mamdani represents the new socialist wing that's captured major Democratic strongholds. He's an actor turned politician who's never created wealth, only redistributed it. His rise in NYC parallels similar movements in Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland, all cities now experiencing massive capital and population flight.
That is the glee. This is your smiling Jacobin. If he had a guillotine nearby and he had the capacity to use it, he most certainly would.
The Jacobin comparison is historically perfect. During the French Revolution's reign of terror, Jacobins claimed moral authority while systematically destroying anyone with property or success. Modern progressives use taxation instead of guillotines, but the underlying resentment and destruction of productive classes remains identical.
So he cuts this ad, which should creep the living hell out of you if you have half a brain, talking about how excited he is to tax people on tax day. Remember, most people think of tax day as a miserable day because, hey, you're giving a bunch of money that you earned to a bunch of people who did not earn that money so they can spend it on random crap.
This moral inversion is stunning. Normal people understand that forcibly taking someone's earnings is inherently problematic, a necessary evil at best. But progressives have reframed this extraction as a celebration. They've convinced their base that theft becomes virtuous when government does it.
But according to Zoran Mamdani, it's the best day because he, as a useless person for his entire adult life, got elected mayor of New York, and now he finally gets to do the thing he wants to do, which is bring the richies low. Not the ones he's friends with, not like Alex Soros, all the other rich people.
Perfect observation about selective enforcement. Notice how Democrat megadonors like Tom Steyer, George Soros, and Hollywood elites never face these punitive taxes. The rules always include carve-outs for politically connected wealth, while targeting independent entrepreneurs and business owners who threaten their power structure.
What is unfair about Ken Griffin spending $1 bajillion for an apartment and then not spending time in the apartment? Do we really think that Zoran Mamdani would be fine with Ken Griffin if he lived in that apartment?
Let's be real.
Ken Griffin's $238 million penthouse purchase directly employed thousands: construction workers, architects, designers, contractors, plus ongoing property taxes funding schools and services. But progressives see only the headline number, not the economic ecosystem that purchase creates. They're economically illiterate by design.
Which are just like the people in Succession, except they're not. I know an awful lot of rich people. Some are like the people in Succession, and many are not. And I know an awful lot of people who are not rich. And some of them are terrible, and some of them are wonderful. The idea that virtue inherently correlates with level of wealth is nuts, but it is what undergirds the level of hatred that Democrats have for people who earn.
This wealth-virtue correlation myth underpins all progressive policy. They've convinced voters that having money automatically makes you evil, while being poor automatically makes you virtuous. It's medieval thinking designed to justify endless redistribution from productive citizens to government-dependent constituencies.
Thank God I have a lot of money in my bank account. I once did not have nearly any money in my bank account. And that's the beautiful thing about America. You can do both of those things in one lifetime. It's pretty incredible.
American economic mobility is what terrifies progressives most. When people can build wealth through merit and effort, they become independent from government control. Socialist policies deliberately destroy these pathways, ensuring permanent dependency on government programs and democratic politicians.
But according to Democrats, that's the bad thing. It would be better if nobody had that money in their bank account. Again, notice the emotivism here, right? The idea that it's all just about emotion. It's not about policy in any way.
Emotivism means making policy decisions based purely on feelings rather than logic or evidence. Progressive taxation isn't designed to raise revenue efficiently. It's designed to satisfy the emotional need to punish success. That's why they celebrate driving out wealthy taxpayers despite losing net revenue.
What is unfair about Ken Griffin shelling out a lot of money to people who built an apartment, who will then use that money to develop more properties in New York City? Where's the terrible thing that Ken Griffin did there? He's terrible just because he doesn't spend time in the city? If that apartment were not bought, would that somehow amount to more housing in the city of New York? Or would it undercut the housing market in the city of New York and lead to less development of more units?
Economic multiplier effects are real. That $238 million doesn't vanish. It flows to contractors, suppliers, workers, and service providers throughout NYC's economy. These luxury purchases subsidize middle-class construction jobs and fund the tax base. Destroying this cycle hurts everyone, especially working families.
By the way, that $500 million amounts to 9% of the total budget shortfall for the upcoming fiscal year. And again, that's a high estimate because the reality is that a lot of these people are going to sell those apartments, get out. A lot of deals are going to be killed.
The math exposes the scam completely. Even if this tax raised $500 million, which it won't, that covers barely 9% of NYC's budget deficit. Meanwhile, it destroys billions in economic activity and drives away the taxpayers who fund essential services. It's economic suicide disguised as social justice.
I know people in the real estate industry, and a lot of people in the real estate industry are backing out of contracts in New York City specifically because of this sort of stuff.
This capital flight is accelerating nationwide. Florida gained $39.2 billion in adjusted gross income from domestic migration in 2023, while New York lost $25.9 billion. High earners aren't making idle threats. They're actually leaving, taking jobs and tax revenue with them. The exodus is measurable and devastating.
And remember, earlier this year, Mamdani tried to threaten the New York governor by presenting a binary choice to fix the city's emergency by saying, one, he could tax the rich, which would either require her approval, or B, implement a steep 10% property tax hike on everybody and then dip into the city reserves. So that was the blackmail here.
Classic progressive false choice. Raise taxes on the rich or punish everyone else. Notice what's never on the table? Reducing the bloated government spending that created the crisis. NYC's budget has exploded 32% since 2014 while population declined. But cutting waste isn't politically profitable for Democrats.
Okay, so you may notice something. Fewer units are being held that way. What happens to the real estate prices? Did they go up or did they go down? Well, look at that. They continued to go up. It did not cure your affordability crisis, did it?
The housing data completely destroys their narrative. Vancouver implemented a similar vacant homes tax in 2017. Housing prices continued rising 23% over 3 years, while tax revenue disappointed. These policies never achieved their stated goals because the underlying economic theory is fundamentally wrong.
He says, consider that while the owners of pied-à-terres pay property and transfer taxes, they don't consume any taxpayer services. It's hard to dispute that the net fiscal impact of pied-à-terres is positive. Tax something, get less of it.
The Manhattan Institute's research confirms what economists predicted. Pied-à-terre owners contribute net positive fiscal impact. They pay full property taxes plus transfer taxes, but consume zero city services. No schools, police calls, or infrastructure wear. It's literally free money that progressives want to eliminate.
The next step, of course, and you know this is coming, will be to lower the threshold from $5 million to $1 million and so on. And then the final step will be to broaden this out so that a new tax just applies to anyone who owns in New York. It's not going to stop with second homes.
Tax expansion follows predictable patterns. The alternative minimum tax originally targeted 155 wealthy families in 1969. By 2017, it affected 5.2 million households earning as little as $200,000. Income tax itself was sold as affecting only the richest 3% before expanding to everyone. History repeats.
Because, again, the case will be made that actually second homes take less advantage of city services than first homes.
The logical contradiction reveals their true agenda. If the goal were actually affordable housing, they'd encourage any housing that doesn't burden city services. But the real goal is punishing wealth itself, regardless of economic consequences. Ideology always trumps practical results for progressives.